Back here on Pot Up, Matthews in the morning, second half of the show. Apologize for any technical difficulties in the first half. Joined by Ryan Urquhart of the Gator Sports Network. And for those that don't know Ryan, maybe don't know his face, I've obviously known Ryan for a long time, but you probably know his voice. If you watched softball last night, you know his voice. He was on the call, did a great job last night for what has been a torrid pace to this Florida softball team right now. I think they've outscored their opponents 65-4 to start the new year. And I think a big reason why is because Ryan's brought some good luck over to Florida softball. But Ryan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. It was a good one last night, and I can't take all the credit. This offense has been outstanding to watch for Florida. I mean, it is really, really exciting. And opening day at home in KSP was great last night. Gator fans did a great job showing up for this team, and they were treated to another double-digit run night and another shutout. So it's been a blast, and doing it with you. This has been fun.
Yeah, another 5 inning affair. The Gators have not played a game over 5 innings so far to start the season. It's been nothing but run rule victories. And I think Herb had the note and you talked about it. I think it's the first time in program history they've started out with now, what is it? Is it five? Have we played 5 games or 4 games? But all of those games consecutive run rule victories. Now, obviously, baseball starts tomorrow. So that's exciting for everybody across the street at Condren Family Ballpark, which you were in the ballpark last night at KSP, and the new video board is there. And I've only been able to see it at practice where they only have the running actual time on there. What kind of new things are on that video board? I'm interested to hear what they have now at KSP.
Well, the first thing I noticed, which was a great addition, is now. I don't know if you remember, if you watched SpongeBob as a kid, that there was an episode where they play "Sweet Victory," and
Oh,
and everybody, and basically like they have all the characters like performing as like a band at the Super Bowl. That now plays when Florida wins, and they run the
oh,
video with like the characters. So that was great. Gator Creative, the creative office, knocked this out of the park. Not to be on the nose about it, but there's new animations when players step up, when there's a strikeout. The balls and strikes are different. That was kind of the biggest adjustment on the radio side, because admittedly we lean on that scoreboard sometimes to tell us the count. So instead of it being numbers, now it's like actual balls that are like crossed through,
hmm.
almost like you would in a scorebook. It looks really cool. It did take some adjusting, because I'd look at the outs and be like, nope, those are the outs, not the balls and strikes. But everything looked really, really good last night. And it just, again, it's this park that seems to keep growing and expanding. And you kind of coined this a couple years ago when the green padding replaced what was formerly blue padding in KSP, that it gave that park a major league feel. And it
Hmm.
feels like that keeps growing now with that scoreboard and with all the way, there's the little things that this park keeps doing to keep trending towards being the best park in this conference. Again, it feels like a major league park, and a scoreboard just added to it, man.
Yeah, and that's Ryan Urquhart. I'm Kyle Crooks, by the way. We call the games on the radio a lot for softball. We're essentially the broadcast team for Gator softball. And when I go over to TV, Ryan does a lot of the games as the lead announcer on radio. So you get a chance to see our faces now here on the podcast. But so you mentioned Major League feel. I know when Coach Walton was revamping the ballpark, it was about a $15 million deal to revamp KDC Shell Presley Stadium. He wanted to make it look a lot like Camden Yards. That was the one thing he always brought up, Oriole Park, where they have the green padded wall, and he wanted to make sure that he kept that or brought over that major league feel to KSP. So that's definitely one of those things that now adding the video board, it grows the tradition. It grows kind of when you walk into the ballpark, you can kind of sense what this program has accomplished. You go across the street and you see the video board they have at baseball, which will be in action tomorrow night. It's this giant thing that almost lights up the whole ballpark on its own. And I think if you go to a softball game this year, you'll notice just a giant difference in the viewing experience inside the ballpark with the new video board. But Ryan, this team right now, so they've scored 65 runs. I think while early in the season, I've called a lot of seasons that there's been a lot of struggle offensively, even with it ending in a World Series trip. I think that's just how good Tim Walton is and his
Yeah.
coaching staff is. They always find a way to get to OKC, whether that's piecemealing things here and there together. I can remember a couple of years ago in 2019, essentially Amanda Lorenz, Kendall Lindemann at the top of the lineup, and the rest of it had really struggled to get anything going offensively. But they found a way through pitching and defense to get there, beat Tennessee in a super regional, get to a World Series. I think that team in 2020, Ryan, was pretty good when the season got canceled.
Yeah.
It seems like, and I guess I'll go here. 2020, you got a taste of what Charlotte Eccles was, right? She was really good in that small sample size. Last year, the issue was the power for her, and didn't homer in SEC play. Now she's homered in back-to-back nights, hitting the ball to all fields. Man, it seems like she's locked in right now.
Yeah, she's dialed in back to 100%. And this feels like the Charlotte Eccles that was there in that 2020 year, where it felt like Florida was, I mean, they came out right before the shutdown. Florida had just got done sweeping Auburn, who was good that year. And you kind of got the sense that Florida might be that kind of team. This Florida team feels different because, and I talked with Coach about this yesterday in the pregame interview, was this offense is so good, 1 through 9, that it kind of captivates us as fans. Like, my gosh, they've scored 65 runs. They've only played 25 innings in 5 games, But a big reason also as to why is Riley Trilicek and Elizabeth Hightower have also been dialed in. I mean, what those two have done, and this is without an appearance yet by Lexi Delbray, another player for Florida that is coming back this year that brings a lot of excitement in what she did as a freshman, and seeing her progress year 1 to year 2. I think that the pitching and the defense is still the foundation of this program, but now with the offense swinging the way they are, it's really, really impressive. And I mean, that Boston University game, I keep going back to it because it's that kind of team that is very, very good, but it was almost the same result, save for 2 runs that Boston scored, one early to tie it up. This version of Florida is really, really exciting, and I can't wait for them to get through the T-Mobile tournament this weekend, see what they do here. But then when they go out to California and they play UCLA and Oregon, I think that'll be a great measuring stick to see where is Florida right now and how do they match up with their peers in the top 5? How does this team perform when they're playing the best of the best that they're going to be seeing in the postseason? That I think will be really, really interesting to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they've scored 65 runs in the first 5 games. That's the first time that has been accomplished by a Florida team in program history. 5 consecutive run rule victories, first time any Florida team has ever done that in program history. Mm-hmm. I think the most runs ever scored by a Florida team in a single season was 2011, and they scored over 500 runs. I think they scored 508 runs that year. This team is trending obviously in that direction. We'll see when the schedule toughens up a little bit how this offense continues to churn. I think we'll learn more out west when the Gators go to the Mariner Classic, UCLA, Oregon. There's going to be some teams out there. I think UCLA and Oklahoma are actually playing each other out west.
Yeah, they will.
So that'll be a really fun tournament. The Gators go annually out to California, have a lot of players on the roster from out west. So that'll be a lot of fun. I want to take care of some business here real quick. Dorian Wiebe, a realtor of Caldwell Banker, Parish, wants to help your dreams come true. Call her today at 352-562-1411 to buy or sell your home in the North Central Florida area. Also, Celebration Point is where Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Nike, International Diamond Center, Dave & Buster's, Bass Pro Shop, Regal Cinemas, Pfizer's Rooftop, and HBC's Restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. I believe recently they actually named, because we have done the ad reads, but they named it Steve Spurrier Way, that road right outside the restaurant. at Celebration Point. They had a big, no pun intended, celebration out there for HBC, and obviously well deserved for him and everything he's accomplished now, not just in his coaching career, but now with the restaurant. Is certainly the place to be in Gainesville at Celebration Point. I'm here in Columbia, South Carolina right now. I don't know if everybody can tell that I'm in a hotel lobby right now, trying not to get too loud, too boisterous. I'm right outside the room where they're going to have the team breakfast in about an hour. And Brian, you know, this is one of the things I look forward to the most.
It's a good job positioning yourself there, man.
I'm like a lion. I'm a lion in the wild right now, waiting for team breakfast just to pounce. But the Gators have #1 South Carolina tonight. It's going to be an environment. I'll say that. Probably 14,000 people in the arena tonight. We'll see if the Gators have something in them, some magic in them to take down #1. 0-11 all time against #1, AP #1. I think they have 5 or 6 wins all time against AP top 5. Last time they won against an AP top 5, 2006. So we'll see if who knows. And then it's actually the first time, Ryan, in program history that the women's basketball program is going to play back-to-back AP top 5 opponents since 1997. The NCAA tournament in 1997. That's when the Gators made the Elite Eight that year. So they have LSU on Sunday. Whew, it's a tough stretch. And obviously, I want to touch on it briefly here. The news about Colin Castleton last night stinks. It stinks. I know he tweeted out that he just kind of can't believe what's happened. The Gators get a win that doesn't necessarily help them in the net ranking because I believe Ole Miss was a quad 3, I think they were a quad 3 victory. So it would do, if you lose that game, your season's pretty much over for NCAA tournament, but you had to win it. The Gators did do it. Shot 59%, hit 10 threes. It's kind of the team we were hoping to see more consistently throughout SEC play. Byron Jones was great. 2 rebounds shy of a double-double, 15 points, 8 rebounds. But obviously, it's not official that you lose Colin for the season here. Denver Parlor, Florida's SID for men's basketball, put out the release last night. Didn't say anything about out for the season, but broken hand. You could obviously understand he's going to be out for a considerable amount of time. Gators have winnable games coming up. Vanderbilt, Georgia, not with the schedule in front of me, just doing it off the top of my head. Kentucky at home, but before all of that, they do have a quad 1 opportunity on the road. I believe it's a quad 1 opportunity against Arkansas. So a chance to get a big win on the road to maybe make that last-ditch effort against for an NCAA tournament spot. So Ryan, you're a Gator guy. For those that don't know, there's been shots throughout football games of Ryan sitting in the stands, of him going like this. It's like the camera has found Ryan throughout the years. I believe one of the games was against LSU. The other game was against who was the other game? The other game
was Tennessee in 2017. There's been a couple. Tennessee in 2017 was one of the funniest ones because of how grueling that game was up until the Hail Mary. There was one against Texas A&M, and then there was 1 or 2 other times where it was like brief, but there were 2 very specific ones. And the one against Tennessee Missouri in 2018 is the one you're thinking of, where I have my hat and I'm like this.
Yeah.
I'm just slowly pulling it down. And the reason I was doing it, and Gator fans will remember this, is that in that moment, Florida was down to Missouri. I don't remember what the score was, but Tommy Townsend, who just won a Super Bowl, was punting, and he had gone in for the tackle, but his helmet had been the first thing to touch the player, and they were reviewing targeting. And I was so certain in that moment that after this just cataclysmic start, Tommy Townsend, our hero at that time, was about to be
now Super Bowl champion, by the way, Ryan.
Yeah, I know. Super Bowl champion. This man, I was certain that he was about to be tossed from the game. Luckily, he wasn't. They ruled it wasn't targeting. But when I first saw the replay, I was in shambles. And ESPN dialed in on me. It doesn't help that I'm 6'5" and very expressive. So I feel like I'm just a director's dream over here of I was like, all right, find me a guy in the crowd, and here's this big guy who's got his hat like this, just but
What do they call that? Surrender Cobra?
oh, I'm a
He's the
surrender Cobra
king.
guy.
Ryan's the king of the Surrender Cobra.
It's a reflex in my traps whenever anything goes awry. It's just immediately, I can't stop myself.
Yeah. So Ryan obviously is a big Florida guy. Went to school here, went through the journalism school.
Yeah.
He said, when I first came here on the job 6 years ago, he was one of the guys that I was able to rely on to do a lot of games with me. And here he is now, one of the voices of Gator softball, one of the voices of South Florida, actually. He does about 110 events every year down in Tampa with the University of South Florida. Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending, right? Helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. Also, Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com and join us on Friday for our Peachland Dentistry JC and the QB weekend picks. So I was talking to Herb Brooks, the SID for softball, the other day. And because I believe, like we said before, Oklahoma and UCLA play each other at the Mary Nutter Classic. The Gators play UCLA. There is a chance after that California road trip that the Gators are #1 in the country, right? Because if you figure UCLA beats Oklahoma, the Gators beat UCLA, that would put them in at #1 in the country. I'm trying to think. I think my first year was the last time that they were #1 in the country. They were #1 a lot before I got here. But I want to say my first year is the last time that they were #1. So that's like 2018 or so. They've been close.
I think 18 was the last year because it would have been on the heels of Florida appearing in the national title. So they would have come in probably like number 2. Right. And then if they won enough, like if Oklahoma dropped the game, they probably would have come up to 1. So I would guess 2018 was probably the last time, probably early.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was at the very beginning, and then it was UCLA and Florida, and then they played in a 1v2 matchup. UCLA won, and Florida was 2.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a very interesting note right now. The Gators move up to number 3 earlier in the week. So they started the week at Jacksonville, won 13-2, win 11-0 last night. The power's back. I think that's one of the biggest storylines and headlines for the Gators. The fact they're hitting home runs again. Charlotte Eccles, Skylar Wallace homer on Tuesday. Bailey Goddard hits a tank shot last night. Emily Wilkie's home run, that went a long way, didn't it, Ryan? And then you had Charlotte homering again up the field.
That's what was crazy is, well, Emily Wilkie, she has a knack for this because I remember game 3 against Ole Miss last year. We're in a tie game. And it's late. It was a doubleheader. They got moved around to rain, and it was kind of one of those that Florida was chartering home, so the team was getting back, but it was late at night, and Emily Wilkie comes off the bench, I believe. I don't remember if she came off the bench in that game, but she hit a home run against Ole Miss, and it looked almost similar to that, where it was just immediately. And this was a first pitch ambush by Emily Wilkie last night. I mean, she did the hardest thing to do in this sport, which is come off the bench and hit. And she hit a home run. And the depth of this team, again, is so impressive that another, kind of on a similar note, Coach Walton said yesterday in the pregame, we got to get Olivia Gigante more at-bats. Yeah. If you don't know her, you're going to know the name soon. She's a two-way player for Florida, has a great swing. She can pitch. She's got it all, and does a really, really good job for Florida. But he was saying we got to get her more at-bats. We got to get her more at-bats. She already has a grand slam as a Gator, and she's 5 games in. She had that against Illinois State. And there's so much offensive depth on this team. Mm-hmm. It's funny because Oklahoma last year was the team that racked up all the runs and was putting up the offensive numbers. They've almost cooled off a little bit and started to rely back on their pitching staff. And they've had to adjust to be a little more defensive oriented. It seems like some of that offensive magic has come the Gators' way because they're just ripping it apart. And this team just feels different. It has been really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's it's hard to explain because again, the schedule is you play who you play to start the year. So the Gators haven't played a ranked team yet or real, but we talked about Boston University, the opening night. That was a Patriot League champion 4 straight years that had made the tournament, I believe, 3 of the last 4 seasons. They that's a good softball team that the Gators routed in 5 innings. So I think if there's one team you can look at on the schedule so far where it's like, wow, that was pretty impressive, I think it would be Boston on night one. We're going to learn a lot more about this team. Coach Walton had always said at first 11 games, we're 5 games in. He wants to look at that first 11-game sample size to see where this team is at right now. But he has so many options in his lineup. You mentioned Olivia Gigante. He's a player that has to find more reps. She has a couple of extra base hits in limited time. Her first hit was a grand slam in Tampa, has the double against Jacksonville the other night. Kayla Pollard is somebody who came in really highly recruited. She's the number 4 recruit in the country right now, and she's just kind of she's been limited to pinch hit duty, and somebody that I think could be a real factor for this team at second base. Maybe if Skylar Wallace gets a half day off at the DP, I don't think that'll ever happen, but she's another option in the middle infield. There's so many players that Coach Walton can go to offensively, especially at the designated hitter spot, where they can run almost 6 players that they have to rotate in that designated hitter spot because there's just so much talent on this team, and it just feels different this year the way this offense is humming along, because I've seen Florida teams that have done it through pitching and defense, and they've scraped together 1-run wins. They've found a way in SEC play to win 3-2 or 2-1. I've seen those teams. This team, with the addition of Bailey Goddard back from injury, because she had that ACL injury, was not able to play last year, getting her back, we said it on the air, Ryan, she's almost like a free agent acquisition, right? Because it's this piece, this power right-handed bat that can play in right field that wasn't even part of your team last year. And all of a sudden she's back in, and it seems like, man, she's locked in, had that big 3-run home run on Tuesday night. There is not a weakness at the moment. There's not a weakness in this lineup where you could say in years past there were multiple weaknesses behind their stars. And it's a product, Ryan, of getting everybody a year older. Kendra Falby. I think I have producer. I think you're on the air right now, so just make sure you meet.
I could use some.
Yes, but it's a product of the younger players getting a year older, right? Kendra Falby a year older. Even Skylar Wallace coming over another year in this program. Reagan Walsh a year older. You can see how that has benefited her. So last year you were the youngest team at the World Series, and this year you're a veteran team that is primed to get back to the World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that's the most indicative of how experienced, how good this lineup can be was last night against Jacksonville. If I look at my scorebook, I believe it was the 3rd inning. Yeah, 2nd inning, where bottom of the order's up, 7, 8, 9. Single, RBI single, turns over to Kendra Falby, another single. I know those aren't power numbers, but when the bottom of your order is producing like that and they're seeing the ball that well, Kyle, we've seen Florida get off to undefeated starts, 5-0, 12-0, 11-0, whatever it is, right, through this kind of pre-conference season. We've never seen them just obliterate opponents like this. We haven't seen them steamroll them. The pitching and the defense has been lights out, especially considering what they lost in Hannah Adams. They've looked really sharp. This is so exciting. And when you have this kind of depth, and Bailey Goddard's almost kind of like the perfect 2-spot hitter. I talked about this with Coach Walton yesterday too, is that Goddard provides a great on-base percentage and a great swing for Florida. But they've got a lot of good hitters in this lineup and a lot of people that they want to get through and take care of. So I just look forward to some of the great games coming up, and also what's coming up at home. We talked about UCLA and Oregon, but Louisiana is going to come to town.
Yeah.
SEC schedule is no joke. Florida State's going to be in the building, and you think down the line, there's a very solid chance that's a top 5 matchup in KDC, Phil Presley, and then the return trip as well on the road in Tallahassee. I think, there's so much about this team that the sky is really the limit with them. And I'm curious to see as we go along what happens the first time that they have an off night. How do they respond? And I think they'll respond to the positive because the pitching and the defense, to me, from my vantage point, look really, really good.
Yeah, all of it has looked good right now. There's no complaints to have. Hightower almost goes perfect on Tuesday night against Jacksonville. Trilicek was very good last night. She's had 9 consecutive scoreless innings to start her season. So, and then what's behind it? You mentioned right now the question mark of Lexi Delbray. The week leading up to the season, she was about 60 pitches in her rehab. She got hurt, I think, after the World Series. Hadn't pitched an inning since the World Series, actually. So she's been re-upping her intensity to get her ready to go for the start of her season. That's a power pitcher. That's a strikeout pitcher. That's somebody that on any given night can give you 10 to 12 strikeouts, and probably was set to be the ace of this staff to start this season before we didn't know that she wouldn't be available. So the 2 pitchers right now look outstanding. Hopefully you get Lexi Delbray back soon, and the Gators bats defensively, especially at second base, which was a big question mark for the Gators coming into this year, because you lose a Gold Glove in Hannah Adams at second base, who probably was the best defensive player I've ever seen in my 6 years here. Just if you were to put any position out there, she was the most steady. Just everything she did, it looked easy. And she only had, I think, like 4 or 5 errors for her entire career. Didn't have an error for her entire freshman year and playing every single game. That is a tough piece to have to replace in your middle field in a program that puts so much on defense, puts so much pressure on being able to make plays and making them routine, that you've seen Reagan Walsh and Sam Rowe really step into that second base spot almost effortlessly defensively. So that's been a good sign. Ruse Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ugrainsurance.com or call us at 352-240-1779. Also, coming up on Friday, I believe, they'll have the Peachland Dentistry, JC, and the QB weekends picks. Peachland Dentistry, Skater Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. So Ryan mentioned the schedule coming up. We'll have the call of the game tomorrow. This is crossover season for Ryan, myself. I'm sure Sean Kelly, voice of the Gators, he's doing some baseball this year as well. This is the time of year. I tweeted out a GIF, Ryan, or a GIF, however you kids call it these days.
I'd say GIF. You say what you want.
An umpire calling a rundown, just getting caught in the rundown, running back and forth. And that's me trying to keep up with all the prep work. So I'm here in a hotel in Columbia, South Carolina, doing my prep for UConn softball and Bowling Green softball, which couldn't be more of the polar opposite of what I'm getting set to call here tonight in South Carolina, trying to stay ahead for LSU women's hoops. They're coming into town to take on the Gators. Kim Mulkey, which, remember, the last time Kim Mulkey came to Exact Tech Arena, the Gators won 73-72. So just keep that in the back of your mind. LSU lost. Here's the thing about tonight, right? So the Gators will take on Leah Boston. It's probably she's going to have a statue somewhere in Columbia, South Carolina. Asia Wilson has a statue. Dawn Staley's going to have a statue, I read. And Leah Boston will have a statue when it's all said and done. You're going to take that on tonight. LSU came in. I'm sure you saw, a highly anticipated matchup, #1 against #3, South Carolina LSU. They won by 24 points. So it's almost like, what are we doing here?
Right.
South Carolina, they have a 37-game win streak dating back to last year, reigning national champion. They've won 27 consecutive SEC games, which is the hardest conference in women's basketball. They've won 27 straight games. They've only played 1 game in league play that has been decided by less than 10 points, which what ironically enough was Georgia. It wasn't even LSU. So it's going to be a tough task tonight. I'm just excited to see the environment. They had 18,000 in the building the other night against LSU. Probably won't be a sellout, but hopefully there's 13, 14,000 in the building. We'll see how the Gators react to that. But busy weekend. Baseball starts up this weekend. Excited about Sully's group. Friday through Sunday series. Charleston Southern comes to town. They have Waldrip, the new transfer pitcher, who'll be in the weekend rotation. Most likely, Brandon Sproat is back. Flame throwing righty, who was drafted high by the Mets, decided to come back for another year. You lose Judd Fabian in the lineup, but you get back Wyatt Langford, who's had an incredible year last year. Went from being a bullpen catcher to 4 at-bats in his freshman year to all of a sudden hitting 26 home runs, had 65 RBI. He's preseason all SEC. BT Riopel comes back, first base catcher combo. They get him back, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, his second year in the program. So pick second in the SEC East behind Tennessee. I think the Gators can make a lot of noise on the baseball side this year. Hopefully can find a way to get through that regional wall this year. Of course, lost in the regional last year to Oklahoma. Try to get back to the World Series and maybe win a national championship. What's exciting, Ryan, about this time of year in Florida athletics is every year Coach Walton, Sully, they have this team competitive to the point where you're talking for the majority of the season, can this team win a national championship? If you're a fan, there's not much more you can ask for. Now, not every year it's going to happen. Some years you might lose in a super. Some years you might lose in a regional. But you have that conversation, that hype as a fan every single year that, man, can this team win a national championship, which not a lot of schools have. And that's why this is the true everything school at Florida.
Yeah. And, that was when I was a student here. I remember the joke was everything school, but it really was applicable to Florida because, you can sit here and say, oh, well, this team's not where I want it to be, or this team's having a down year. This team's been a little off. Here's the thing is that this place seems to always have teams. There was a run there, I forget for how many years, where it's like Florida kept winning a national title, whether it was gymnastics, baseball, softball, whatever it was, that Florida just kept winning national titles. And most schools don't experience that. And that's what's so unique about Florida or being at a school like this, is that there's so many teams that, you put it pretty eloquently, are going to have the conversations of, can we win the national title? Do they have the pieces? And I think that this year that conversation is very much in the affirmative on either diamond side. Florida baseball and Florida softball both have a lot to be excited about. And the best part is these days, it isn't like when I was a student. They're right across the street from each other. So you can go watch one, and then, Florida's up 11-0, walk across the street, check out, what's going on with baseball. So I think that this year there's a lot with Florida baseball and what Sully has going that you can really hang your hat on. And it's going to be a good schedule. A lot of good teams come to Gainesville, Miami, all that stuff. So it'll be a fun ride.
Yeah. And, that's what's fun about this weekend. You can stay on one side of the street, watch one game of a doubleheader for Gator softball on Saturday, go back across the street and watch Gator baseball. Gator lacrosse is preseason conference champions. They win that conference just about every year. I believe are they still in the American, Ryan?
Yeah, they're still in the American. They should be. They're once again the preseason favorites and someone who will be involved.
Yeah, Ryan, part of his versatility, called a lot of Gator lacrosse for us throughout the years. So Ryan's voice. Now you get to see his face. He's going to be calling a lot of Gator softball coming up. Hopefully we'll see Ryan on some TV games this year, with maybe some conflicts for me coming up here with basketball and in the postseason. Ryan's done some SEC Plus with Francesca and Naya. I can't wait to start up with Francesca again. I believe in a couple weeks or so with the T-Mobile tournament. And again, don't throw stones or tomatoes our way, but the softball games this weekend will not be televised, but they will be radio only. Baseball will be televised because there's so many events going on where people don't understand behind the scenes. There's only so much capacity to do the number of events that we're trying to do during crossover season, and you also have to staff these events. So with that, some sports don't get the whole TV treatment like baseball does. So they're kind of behind the scenes as to why maybe not everything is televised early in the season. So that's the case this weekend. Softball will be on radio. I'll be there Friday and Saturday. Ryan will be there Friday, but we'll have all the games on radio for softball. Baseball will be on television this weekend on SEC Plus, and also will be on radio. Of course, you got men's basketball this weekend, women's basketball on Sunday. Lacrosse is at North Carolina on Saturday. You got gymnastics tomorrow night, I believe. They're rolling along. Jenny Rowland's crew is just outstanding, and heck, they might win a national championship as well. So that'll wrap it up for today's show. Again, apologize for any technical difficulties early on, but I'm glad that me and Ryan got to chat some softball and some Gator sports. Ryan, great job. Appreciate you being flexible, getting on with us a little bit earlier for the show. Always a joy chatting with you, my friend.
I know, and don't worry, we'll times converse in even the next 20 minutes. We'll see you on the softball side.
Yep, that sounds good. So for Ryan Urquhart, our producers here today for Pot Up Matthews in the morning, I'll be back next week. Shane will be back tomorrow. I'm Kyle Crooks saying so long for now. Have a great day, everybody.